Hi Floss fans, my name's Ella. This is my channel Spectrum Stitcher, where I talk about all things cross stitch, other crafty interests including quilting, knitting, whatever else takes my fancy. I also talk about my PhD research in relation to climate change law and phasing out coal in Australia. And also I talk about what I've learned about being an autistic woman. So my pronouns are she, her, and before I film the rest of my video, I'd just like to acknowledge that I'm filming this video from the Wathaurong People's Land in Geelong, Australia, land that was never ceded, and I pay my respects to their elders past, present and future. So if you've watched my videos before, welcome back, but you'll also know that I tend to usually make quite long regular Flosstube updates, and it's been a little while since I've made a regular Flosstube update, so I don't have a lot of time today, but I thought I'd just not let that stop me from doing a quick little Flosstube check-in with you all and show you what I've been up to recently. If you're new here, welcome. Have a check out of my other videos. I do film some regular Flosstubes in that traditional Flosstube style, but also recently I've been filming little snippets of some quilting project updates that I've been doing. I did a film on the layout of my quilt. I've been taking you along with me on some antique haul journeys when I've been out and about in regional Victoria where I live. And I recently filmed a video about my first ever stitching retreat experience at the Stitch in Time Hobart retreat, which was a fabulous experience. So have a look at that. But today I'm just going to do a quick regular Flosstube update. I'm going to leave my quilting progress to another video just to keep things short today, but yeah, mainly focus on my cross stitch progress of recent times. But as always in my usual videos, I do a little spotlight on some things that's been happening in the space that I do my PhD research in, and I also share my things that I'm learning about my autism. So first for PhD Spotlight. Since I made my last Flosstube, which was a little while ago now, we've had a change in federal government in Australia. So we've now got a Labor federal government. Prime Minister is Anthony Albanese. And my ring light's just gone out. I have no idea why, but we'll just proceed. Sorry if the lighting's now a little bit under par. So anyway, we have a new Prime Minister, a new government, and this new government was very quick to make a new commitment called a nationally determined contribution under the Paris Agreement. So the new commitment is that we will reduce our greenhouse gas emissions in Australia to 43% below 2005 levels by 2030, and that's a 15% increase on the ambition of the previous commitment. This government also reaffirmed the commitment to reaching net zero by 2050. So it's been described as a sector-wide target, and this government is also planning to implement this target via legislation, something that previous governments haven't done. And what that means is that it will be binding and enforceable in Australian law. Which would be very exciting. There's been some debate about it as to whether the Greens Party and others will support it, because some people believe that this isn't going far enough. For example, there have been calls for a prohibition on new coal and gas projects, and that without that, this new target would be meaningless. Now, I'm a very strong supporter of a prohibition on new coal and new gas. But I'm also very cognizant of the last 10 years of inaction, and I see a step forward as better than no step forward. So I would be very happy for this 43% target to be legislated, and I hope that the fact that it doesn't go as far as some would like won't hold up its progress. Another thing to know about this target, though, is that it is in line with the way that the Paris Agreement under the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change is geared, or the governance style underneath that agreement. What I mean by that is that there's an emissions accounting system under the Paris Agreement, which is territorial based. So each country is responsible for emissions in its own territory. And this nationally determined contribution, it talks about Australia reducing its emissions within its own territory, which is still great. But Australia exports a lot of its emissions in the form of coal that is dug up here, exported overseas and then burnt overseas. So this new target, whilst being sector-wide, it will encourage us to, as Australians, the Australian economy, to address its consumption of coal, so to phase out its coal-fired power plants and its gas reliance as well. But it won't really do anything to halt us extracting and exporting coal, which even though that's consistent with the way that things are done under the Paris Agreement, I believe that because we know how harmful burning coal is, we shouldn't, Australia should not export that harm by exporting that coal. So it's just a complexity to be aware of in the way that commitments are made under the Paris Agreement, and it's just a reminder to not just go to bed at night thinking that the world's well because we now have a stronger target that is very, very welcome, but there's still a lot that needs to be done to address the contribution Australia and other fossil fuel exporting nations make when they dig up their fossil fuels and export them overseas. So I will leave some links below in the description box about that. Please feel free to have a look, and if you've got any questions, please put a comment in the comment below and I will get back to you. Okay, so what I've been learning about my autism recently. Well, I took my family to Bendigo and we went to the Elvis exhibition and it was wonderful. But unfortunately on the way there we were parked at a stoplight, or stationary at a stoplight, and a car went into the back of us. We were fine, the other driver was fine. Both cars were insured, the car will be fixed, but it was still quite a shock. But I learned that I'm someone that can be very calm in a crisis, compartmentalize and just be very pragmatic and practical and not have an emotional response at the time. But then I have a delayed processing time, and then a couple of days later I did process all of the fear and the shock and the emotions surrounding having that car accident. So this is something I knew about myself, but I've never really thought about through an autism lens since I've discovered that I am autistic. And I realised that, it's a real advantage to be very procedural and pragmatic in a crisis situation, and it's something that I'm glad my autism has given me, for want of a better description. But then, yes, when I felt really sort of emotionally intense a couple of days later and then hungover from that, I realised, I still have emotions about this. I just have a slower processing time than, say, a neurotypical person would. And that's okay, and that's interesting, and it was just an interesting thing to think about. So that's what I've learned about my autism recently. Hopefully you don't feel I'm rushing through this too much. I don't have a lot of time today, but as I said, I didn't want to have that hold me back from checking in with you all. So I will now go to some cross-stitching updates, and then, but it will be a shorter video today. So I have some fully finished objects. So these are finishes that you've seen before when I finished the actual stitching, but now they are fully finished, or FFO'd as we call them, into their final, in this case, framed state. So the first one I want to show you is Barbara Anna's Easter hare. It was in an edition of Punch, Needle and Primitive Stitcher magazine. I'll put the details below. So I showed you this when I finished the stitching, but now I've put it in this blue embroidery hoop. Thank you to those who gave feedback on whether to go with cream or blue. I did end up going with the blue just because it picked up on the beautiful blue in this tones in the foliage. And then I've backed it with some felt in yellow. The reason I went for yellow is because there is yellow in the design, but also I really associate this colour with Easter, and this will be part of my Easter display. So I just thought it was sweet and fun and bright, and went with the rest of my Easter decor. Now usually I would stitch the felt on after I've laced the cross stitch at the back, but in this instance I didn't give myself much of a margin. I probably should have been a bit more generous when I cut this out of the main piece of fabric. So I did use some acid-free glue to put this felt on. And I'm very excited. I'm going to wrap this in some acid-free tissue paper, put it away with my Easter decorations, and then be really excited when I get it out at Easter next year. I'm proud of myself that I've got some handmade Easter decorations to go with the rest of my display. So it was a beautiful little stitch. I'm very glad that I fully finished it. I've discovered I'm not the best at following through with after I've done the stitching to then go to the fully finished item stage. It's not my favorite bit of the process, so I'm glad that at least with this one I've managed to do that. So the next fully finished item I want to show you, again, you've seen the finished stitching before, but I went ahead and had this one framed. It is Cactus Cat by Satsuma Street, and I did this for one of my children, and it hangs next to Garden Cat, also by Satsuma Street, which I had framed in the same frame. So this, because I'd had the other one professionally framed, I thought it would be nice to take this one to the same framer and get the same frame, and then they look fantastic hanging side by side in my child's room. Makes their room look very bright and happy, and they do really appreciate and love it. So I'll insert a picture here of what these look like side by side in my child's room. Turns out it's almost impossible to do this without glare because of the window. But as promised, here is the video of Garden Cat and Cactus Cat hanging side by side. Here is Garden Cat. Here's Cactus Cat. Here they are together with a messy shelving of clothes below. But they look really cute together on the wall, framed side by side. Very happy with that. So yes, very happy with this finish. Apologies for any glare because I have put it behind glass, but I think it looks really sweet. Okay, so now on to some stitching whips. Works in progress. So for a little while, I sort of lost my stitchy bug, as people in the Flosstube land tend to say, and in terms of cross stitch, and I really just did a lot of stitching on my hexagon English paper pieced quilts, which I will update you on in a separate video, but I've also put some updates on my Instagram at Ella Rose Vines. I'll put that in the description box below. Go have a check it out there. But then eventually my stitching bug came back. And so I wanted to share some updates on the works in progress that I've done. The stitchy bug came back mainly encouraged after just going to the cross stitch retreat, breathing, living cross stitch for a few days, and just then getting itching to do it again. And also I had COVID, and during that period of time, I found, spending a lot of time at home encouraged me to get that needle and thread back out. So one whip that I worked on is Forest by Emily Peacock, which I have shown you in previous videos. Now, I can't for the life of me find where I've put that today. And on that note, I have realized that I used to live in a state of blissful unawareness about how many works in progress I had or how many kitted up projects I had, so projects ready to go and stitch with the floss and fabric. And I was happy about that because I didn't want to feel overwhelmed. But now I've realized I can't find anything. For example, when I was packing for the stitching retreat in Hobart, I found a work in progress that had been separated from its threads. Can't find its threads anywhere. So the time is coming where I'm going to have to sort through everything or reorganize everything, realize how many works in progress I have, and I might take advantage of that effort and film a whip parade for you then so you can see all of those. But yes, can't find Forest by Emily Peacock. I will see if I have a recent progress picture to put in insert here. Oh my goodness, I was so panicky that I'd lost this, but guess what? Had a rummage around later in a panic and found it. So here's my progress, and you'll have to forgive the poor lighting, on Emily Peacock's Forest pattern. And yeah, I got to stitch that big pine cone, which is what attracted me to the pattern in the first place. You might have seen some progress updates on Instagram if you follow me over there, so maybe this doesn't look too new to you, but there's certainly a lot of progress since last time I showed it in a Flosstube. So it's ticking along. Still got another motif down here to do. We've got to finish this one up here, and then there's a whole lot of French knots and back stitching and other sort of embroidery to go on the top. So still a way to go, but I'm loving working on this. So yes, I've made some progress on that. There's still a long way to go, but yeah, when I find it, I will put it in a safer spot and then update you on it next time. I had a new start, which I'd like to show you, and this is Elizabeth's Squirrel by the Scarlet Letter. Now, this is a Victorian needlework picture that has been reproduced, and I just love it. I think it's bright and bold, and even though it's a reproduction from a different era, it does remind me a lot of a peacock, a unicorn, and a badger, which has also been reproduced by the Scarlet Letter. And it's similar in that you can do a lot of outlining and then colour in with the fill-in colour, and I'm really enjoying that. You know, when I have head space for counting, I can do that. When I don't, I've got some fill-in to do, so I've been enjoying that so far. Now, this is a full coverage piece, so that background that you see is actually stitched, but I decided I would try to find a piece of fabric that in a similar tone, or a tone I was happy with, that could save me a lot of stitching and just form the background colour for this piece. So that's the way I'm doing it. And now, because, oh, you can hear a cough in the background, I've got a beautiful little person watching me film this video. They decided they'd like to watch, and they're having some afternoon tea across the table from me and being very good watching. They've got a little cough, but yeah, excuse that. So now that I've made all these friends at the cross stitch retreat, I can now feel as fancy as Brenda and Laura from Brenda and the Serial Starter, and get a consult on fabric choice. So I put up some options in our chat group that we have, and the majority of people advised me to go with, and I was very glad that they chose this because it's working out well so far. Decrepit is the colorway by Number 12 Stitch Co. It's 18 count hand dyed Ada, and here is my start. So you can see what I mean by outlining and then coming back in and colouring in later. So just for your reference, it is this part of the pattern that I've started here. So a modest start, but a start is still a start, right? So there you go. I'm doing that in the called for DMC. Okay, oh, and here are the threads. I'll just show you the colours now. It's become a bit of a rat's nest in my bag here, but I'm sure you'll forgive me. So the beautiful, bright, bold colour palette, just gorgeous. Okay, so other works in progress. Now, I just wanted to, I've been keeping these, oh, are you okay? Yeah. Been keeping these in my handy dandy needle roll that I got from Spotlight. I've been really enjoying using this. I got it to take to the retreat, and yeah, it's been really, really handy. So highly recommend. I might even make myself another one like Catherine and Victoria from Neat and Knot by the Sea did. So I started this one for the retreat, and I stitched, it was great retreat stitching because I'd sort of marked out where the margins or the stitches were to go, and then didn't even have to count or refer to a pattern while I was there. So I stitched most of this on the retreat. This is Primavera by Satsuma Street. I will insert a picture of that pattern here. And this is part of a series. I've already stitched Autunno, the autumn one. Now I'm doing this one. So I've done the grid, and now I can put in the beautiful motifs, and I'm stitching this on a 14 count white Ada. The next piece I have to show you is by, oh, poor coughing person, are you okay? Is by Mojo Stitches, who was the visiting designer at the retreat that I went to in Tasmania. And so of course I was very motivated to get out one of my works in progress by her. This is Bushland Quaker. I'll insert a picture of the pattern. the cover sheet here. So I'm using the Called for Cottage Garden threads. Apologies if the colours are blowing out a bit there. And I bought that in a thread pack from Joanna at Mojo Stitches on her Etsy store. Please check out the details in the description box below. And I'm loving how this is turning out. I'm stitching it on an 18 count Ada from number 12 Stitch Co. in the colourway Salted Caramel. So I haven't made a lot of progress on this, but I was, inspired to get it back out after meeting Joanna at the retreat. I mainly stitched this motif here. I'd really like to, as with anything, I'd really like to, just put my foot down and get this one done, because I can't wait to see this on my wall. The next work in progress is Arcadia by Satsuma Street. Here's a picture of the cover. So the idea was to get this done for one of my children's birthdays. That date has been and gone. But I enjoyed stitching on this when I had COVID. The 14 count black Ada I'm stitching it on does make it a bit tricky, and I do use my phone to shine through the back of it while I stitch, but that sort of makes my eyes go a bit blurry, or at least when I had COVID it was a bit irritating, so that's what sort of slowed me down there. I also don't really like using the DMC metallic threads. But I'm happy with how this is coming along, and I see this as a great companion piece to Satsuma Street Voyage, which is the colourful ship that I've already stitched, and I'm looking forward to hanging this next to that as sort of the destination that the ship was going to, this beautiful golden city. So that's my progress on Arcadia by Satsuma Street. I'm using all the called for DMC, including the DMC metallic. So they are the works in progress that I have worked on in the last little while. So now some Save the Stitches / some haul. So I went to the antique market that was attached to Bendigo Pottery in Bendigo. Highly recommend going there to find some treasures. And some beautiful stitched tablecloths jumped out at me. So here's the first one. Beautiful cross-stitched motif in each corner as a beautiful border. A beautiful drawn stitch hem, and this beautiful, beautiful central motif. Not a stain on this one. I'm just loving it. Now I've decided, because I'm accumulating quite a lot of these things because I just can't let them languish in an antique place, that I either need to use them as tablecloths, and because I think the reason they're pristine is because they were put away and not used very often, right? But I've either got to, I don't want to just accumulate these in my cupboards. I want to get them out and use them. And if I don't use them as tablecloths, I want to repurpose them. So I've been looking on Pinterest for what people would do with doilies and tablecloths. And I'm thinking about using them in either quilt panels or putting them on into some clothing items, or I want to use these treasures regularly and not have them sit in a cupboard. So that's what I'm thinking at the moment. Yeah, so another piece I got was embroidered rather than cross-stitched. It's got a beautiful scalloped edge and some drawn thread work there. I'm not sure if you'd technically class that as hardanger. If anyone knows, please let me know. And some beautiful embroidered motifs. We've got a poor little coughing person. They've had a PCR, they don't have COVID, which is good. But yeah, I loved the peach or the apricot tones in those blooms and the little pops of blue. So this one jumped out at me and had to come home with me. Then another one, they were just sitting there waiting for me, weren't they? Another cross-stitched one. This one has a beautiful crocheted lace edging. And this has beautiful geometric pastel blooms around a border with these little motifs more centrally and then forming that geometric pattern in the middle. So just gorgeous. Okay, and then so that was my Save the Stitches haul. But then my partner's lovely mother, Robin, hi Robin if you're watching, she went antiquing in Wonthaggi quite a while ago now, and I've been meaning to show you the beautiful gift that she came back with, some Save the Stitches. She found someone's stash of patterns and some of their works in progress and brought them home for me, and it was just the most beautiful gift. So she said she found, and I don't know how she, like, I mean, this probably wouldn't have stood out to me, so she did some super sleuthing, but there was this black folder like this, and then she opened it up and it was full of patterns and cross-stitch patterns, and then some linen and some works in progress. So I won't take everything out of the folders, but I'll take you through what's in there. So there's a shepherd's bush pattern here, and then a Beatrix Potter birth sampler, another birth sampler by the Victoria Sampler, Sentimental Samplers by Sandra Sullivan. This was such a treasure trove for her to have found. I'm so excited about this. And wait till I show you the pièce de résistance out of this. So this is the Mary Ann, can't read backwards, Backhouse Sampler by the Sampler Treasury. Sweet little pattern. Christmas Gentleman by Marilyn Gondry. I think that font's a bit difficult to read. Oh, sorry, nearly showed you a pattern there. Noah's Ark Sampler by the City Stitcher. So apologies for that glare, but that's a sweet pattern. Then there's it's called Needlewoman, the Seamstress. It's a leaflet. The pattern's by Paula Vaughan. Then there are some cottage magnet kit with the DMC floss, so I'll put that to good use. And then there's a Semco kit of a beautiful little kitten. Let's see if that's been started. I think it has. Oh, this is exciting. I haven't checked this out yet. So here's what the pattern is. Very sweet. There's, looks like, you know, the balance of the floss here, so that will be very handy. And then this stitcher has, they're much more diligent than me. They have gridded their work. I can't quite tell which way this is supposed to go up, but they've made some significant progress here, so I should be able to finish that off. So how cool to get someone's, it's the first time I've, you know, I think it's the first time I've had someone's work that I could actually finish off, save some unfinished objects or UFOs out there. It's quite exciting, really. And then there's some horses and hounds patterns, and I'll show you those quickly. And then Angel Alphabet. Now, the thing I'm most excited about in this is that they had started a Beatrix Potter sampler, and I'd actually like your thoughts on how I should proceed with this. But before I show you that, there was also some really decent size offcuts of linen that don't smell, aren't stained, that I'll be able to put to good use. And it's more sort of cream colour. So this, I love Beatrix Potter, and I don't have any Beatrix Potter's patterns, so this is a very sweet little sampler to have. So I would have been happy with the pattern alone, and I'm particularly keen on this Jemima Puddle Duck. But also in this folder was the person's very substantial start on this sampler. Oh, I'm having trouble getting it all in frame there. So they've done three full motifs and started on a fourth. So we've got beautiful Benjamin Bunny. What's that one called? Is it Tom? I can't remember what that one's called. I'm having a mental blank. But then we've got beautiful, cute Peter Rabbit. How beautiful. Now, it looks like there's enough fabric here to do the whole sampler on. But part of me would like to just take these motifs that have been completed and turn them into little individual framed pieces or little small cushions. Let me know what you think below. I would like to stitch the whole sampler, but it'd be nice just to have some instant gratification by putting these little motifs into their own little frames or pillows. Or maybe some hanging Easter decorations for next Easter. But they're just beautiful, and this stitch is very clearly very talented. And one of those diligent people that does all the back stitch before they move to the next motif. Not like me. So yeah, thank you so much, Robin, for such a beautiful treasure trove of stitching, save the stitches from another stitcher that I will treasure and finish and put to good use. Then the last thing I wanted to show you today is a treat I bought myself. This beautiful book. It's called The Archivist's Edit, and it's a history of the Liberty of London Fabric Archives, and it is just a beautiful, beautiful book to have. I purchased it from the Strawberry Thief in Western Australia, and like even the end papers, and they've now made a fabric out of this that you can purchase, but it's got all of the little labels from the Liberty Archives that they've made into this beautiful work of art. Oh, it's quite a heavy book too, so you don't want to hit yourself in the face with it like I just did. But it is just, it's not only is it well written and an interesting history, but it's got beautiful images of the actual archives in Liberty of London. So just a gorgeous book to have and to treasure and to dip in and out of and to read. So yeah, that's an extra bit of haul that I thought I'd share with you. So I know this has been a quicker visit, but as I said, I haven't had a lot of time to film recently, so I just wanted to make a quick little check-in with you to say that I'm still really loving engaging with this community and connecting with you all. Thank you for all your comments and your likes and subscribes. We're steadily growing into quite a generously sized community, which is just delightful that we can all have a space to discuss our common interests. Thank you to those of you who have shared your experiences with autism or have said that they've learned something about my PhD research and climate change through my videos. It's just every interaction that I've had has been so wonderful and much appreciated. So I hope to check in sooner rather than later. Until then, I hope you all keep well and enjoy some stitching time. But yeah, let's all take each day one stitch at a time until I see you next. I'll see you soon, Floss fans. Bye.